Good afternoon, everyone. We are just going to give it about a minute for everyone to attend or to log on. And we'll start here at 12:01. Thanks for joining us today. Good afternoon, Irma. Thanks for dropping that into the chat. Alrighty, it is 12:01, so I'm going to kick things off. Welcome to our May 2026 webinar, Driving Equity and Demand, EV Charging 101 for Multifamily Housing. My name is Rachel Peterson from Ecology Action, and I will be your moderator today. First off, just a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and you will get a copy of it after the recording. All attendees will be muted throughout the webinar today. If you do want to ask questions, we ask that you click the chat feature to ask questions, and then we'll reserve about the last 15 minutes to answer anything that's come in through the chat. We will have polls during the duration of this webinar. You can find the polls tab at the bottom strip of the webinar window. A new question will pop up when the poll is launched. The answers are anonymous, and so we encourage you to weigh in. And I'm very proud to introduce our hosting organizations. First off, we have Peninsula Clean Energy, which is the EV Ready program provider, and their mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by expanding access to sustainable and affordable energy solutions. And we have Ecology Action, and we are the EV Ready program partner. And our mission is to advance equitable community climate solutions in high greenhouse gas emitting sectors. And I'll introduce today's panelists. First off, we have Dennis Lynch, who is our EV charging project manager at Ecology Action. We have Melanie Jasper, who is the program manager for the EV Ready program at Peninsula Clean Energy, or PCE. We have Max Henniger. Oh my gosh, Max, I feel like I might have just butchered your name.
Nailed it.
Yes, all right. Who is the Associate Director of Real Estate Development at Eden Housing. And we also have Elaine Palacios, who is the project developer at Mercy Housing. Now I'm going to hand it over to Dennis.
Thanks, Rachel, and welcome to all of our attendees. As Rachel mentioned, I'm Dennis Lynch. I'm an EV charging project manager at Ecology Action, so I've been supporting EV charging installations and evaluations across the state over the last 3 years. Today, we'll start off by having Melanie introduce Peninsula Clean Energy and their support for EV charging. Then I'll cover some of the basics of EV charging for multifamily housing, setting the stage for our panel discussion with Max and Elaine about their experience enabling access to charging at affordable housing communities. And then finally, we'll wrap up by opening the discussion and taking questions from the audience. I'd love to hear how our attendees are thinking about EV charging. And before I pass it to Melanie, we have our first poll to get a better sense for the audience's familiarity with EV charging. So have you installed EV chargers at your property?
All right, we're getting a few answers in. It looks like the majority, 88% of participants have not installed EV chargers. So we're glad you're here.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Peninsula Clean Energy. Peninsula Clean Energy, we are the ones managing and importantly funding this EV Ready program. So I'm just going to give you a little background about why we're here, why we're interested in programs like this one. So Peninsula Clean Energy, we are an electric utility. We're a locally led electricity provider. So you can see by this diagram, we work in conjunction with PG&E PG&E owns the transmission lines, but PCE, we generate all the electricity that comes to and powers your homes in our service territory. And most importantly, we are non-for-profit, which means anything we make from the sale of electricity gets reinvested into community programs such as this one. And that's what I love about my job. It's really, get to be part of reinvesting in our community. And in this case, we're doing that from EV charging. And we support EV charging by providing both incentives. So there is funding available, and we are, again, self-funded. So that funding is here to stay for this foreseeable future. And we also provide technical assistance, and that's the services that Ecology Action helps us to provide that one-on-one assessment of each property. We've been around since 2020. We've installed over 2,500 charging ports. That's over 300 property owners we've worked with to install those ports, and we're here to stay at least for the next few years. We can go ahead and continue the next slide. So what we're seeing from, especially from the time this program was started and how it's evolved, is that EV charging demand has continued and continued to rise. There's nearly 60,000 EVs in our service territory. This was actually 1 in 5 vehicles purchased last year in San Mateo County were an EV. And this is increasingly becoming that amenity that property owners are, or sorry, that tenants are starting to expect. And just like an in-unit laundry machine might be the reason a tenant chooses to rent or not, an EV charger, it's becoming that same expectation, that same amenity that renters are looking for. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. And the good news that we're seeing is that even if you install more outlets or more chargers than there might currently be demand for, we have seen from the data and from experience that when it's built, drivers will come. When that outlet or charger is made available at a parking space, more of those residents will choose to adopt an electric vehicle. And we saw this recently at a project that we completed at the end of 2024. So over last year in 2025, the number of EV drivers doubled at that property. So we definitely are seeing that this is coming true. Where charging is made available, people are able to make that choice. And with that, I believe that's the end of my slides. I'm going to turn it back over to Dennis. He's going to give us our high-level overview before we take it into the panel discussion.
Thanks, Melanie. Before we get into the EV charging basics, I think we have the next poll of the day. So I know most of the attendees have not installed EV chargers at this point. So just curious to hear what's preventing you from installing EV chargers. This will be an open-ended answer. So I'm sure we'll have a variety of responses.
We don't have any answers yet, but feel free to put your answer in. Let's see here. I'm actually having trouble seeing the answers. So if you also would want to put your answer into the chat, we would love to see it. Apologies all.
And that's all right too. On the next slide, we have some of the common questions at least about EV charging. So we can definitely want to see some of these responses, but also can chat about some of the common EV charging questions that we have. So properties face different challenges in installing EV chargers, but there are some commonalities that come up when we're evaluating and designing EV charging projects. People want to know what type of charger is appropriate for their property. Wouldn't they just want the fastest charge? Who pays the electric bill is a really big question. So how does a property ensure that they're not losing money on charging? A lot of people also assume that they'll have to give up parking spaces, which are often pretty limited already. And getting leadership on board, especially within a medium or larger size organization, can be a challenge at a single property or across a portfolio. And then, of course, the costs and timelines for an installation is essential to understand before moving forward. So I'll try to answer some of these questions or start answering some of these questions in the next few slides. One of your first decisions when you're evaluating EV charging is to select the type of charger that's appropriate for your property. And when we're thinking about EV charging within multifamily housing properties, we're really trying to find the balance between a charging station's rate of charge, so the speed of the charger, and the amount of time that a car will be parked and charging. The most accessible form of charging is called level one charging. You might have a resident that is running an extension cord from their unit across the sidewalk to their EV. This is actually a form of level one charging. We don't necessarily recommend it. Level one charging uses a standard 120 volt outlet to provide a trickle charge, so delivering between 3 to 5 miles of range per hour. It works best in assigned parking with long dwell times, like overnight charging. And it's a great solution to be able to maximize your charging footprint because it requires less power than some of the other options. Level ones can also be an effective way to try to meet building code requirements for EV charging. And then the next level up, low power level two, it's similar to level one charging with a 240 volt outlet rather than a 120 volt. This method provides between 10 to 20 miles of range per hour. It depends on the vehicle as well. So faster than level one, but still ideal for those longer charging sessions of 8 or more hours overnight charging. Where low power level two is like a garden hose at 20 amps, full power level two chargers are more like a fire hose, typically operating between 32 up to 80 amps. These charging speeds are between 20 to 40 miles per hour of charge and really make shared charging a possibility with level 2 units. A full charge is possible within 6 to 8 hours, even over the course of a workday for workplace charging. So these level 2 units are probably what you picture when you're thinking of an EV charger. They're wall mounted or they're pedestal mounted. They have the connector cord, the charging cord, and they have the connector to your vehicle. And then finally, DC fast chargers they're like a waterfall. They're really designed to replicate the gas station model, so try to provide a full charge as quickly as possible. For context, my Hyundai Kona hatchback takes about an hour to charge at a fast charger, but newer models might charge in 15 to 30 minutes. These DC fast chargers have really high installation costs and huge power demands, so they make them an unlikely fit for multifamily housing. They're most commonly found as a Tesla supercharger or an EVgo box that you'd find in a parking lot or in shopping centers. Thanks, Rachel. A key feature in offering EV charging is the ability to have EV drivers pay for their electricity use. So some communities might choose to provide free charging, but most properties really want to at least recover the cost of electricity that's used by drivers. Many properties also choose to add a surcharge or a fee to create a new revenue stream from EV charging. And there are two primary ways to make sure that drivers are paying for the electricity that they use. Network chargers allow a driver to pay for each charging session as they initiate the charge. That's using a combination of a mobile app, a QR code on the charger, or a credit card reader. We actually see Mike from GoPower EV. I think he might be in the audience. I thought I saw GoPower EV out there, demonstrating how to manage a charging session with the GoPower EV mobile app. These software platforms give property operators control over their on-site EV chargers. So operators can set electricity prices, they can establish access privileges and assign drivers to specific chargers. They can also manage charging sessions with features like idle fees for shared charging. These network chargers, they typically operate on a subscription model. So there may be annual fees charged to the property or monthly fees that the drivers themselves will pay. And then direct wiring is another approach. It's a little less common in larger multifamily settings. It connects one charger directly to one unit's electric meter. So this charger is then physically assigned to that unit, and the cost for charging appear directly on that unit's monthly electric bill. Direct wiring can be a good fit for HOAs or when the electrical room is right next to assigned parking areas. It might not be appropriate for every building, but there are cases where it fits. And then before we move on, I want to touch on how properties different approaches they can take to make charging more affordable for their residents. So usually chargers are really often installed on a common area electric meter. So they'll use the same electric rate price as the other loads on that meter. This can often lead to higher than ideal charging prices for drivers. It really depends on that meter's rate schedule from the utility. As an alternative, a property can install an EV dedicated electric meter as they're putting in their chargers, which lets them take advantage of PG&E's discounted EV charging rate to offer significant savings to residents as they use these chargers. So this approach helps to ensure that residents are able to receive the financial benefits of driving electric and being able to charge at home. And the last piece I'll talk about before we get into our panel is about how EV charging can work within existing parking layouts. So shared charging is a common method to maximize access to charging at a property. Certain parking spaces will be designated as EV charging spaces, which makes charging available to any approved drivers at that property. Charging access can be limited to a property's residents, or it can be expanded to be available to the general public. These parking spaces will be converted to EV charging spaces and ADA accessible spaces. So it's a good option for properties that have excess parking spaces available or already have a shared parking model. Shared charging typically requires faster charging speeds, so level 2 chargers are usually an appropriate choice here. But EV charging doesn't always require giving up parking spaces. Assigned charging can be a great way for properties with more limited parking to provide chargers without losing spaces. Assigned charging works by assigning a specific driver to a specific charger in an assigned parking space. The parking space remains an assigned space, so no parking is lost, and parking assignments can be updated as residents adopt electric vehicles. Since assigned parking allows for longer dwell times and that overnight charging, level 1 and low power level 2 chargers start to become a good option with this layout. So that was a fairly quick overview of the basics of EV charging. I'm sure we'll have questions, and there are always more questions that come up with a specific property. But I want to pass it back to Rachel to open up the panel discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dennis and Melanie. I am now going to pass it to Max, who's going to be talking about Eden Housing and their EV charging infrastructure.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. A little bit about Eden. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer, owner, operator. We've been around since 1968 and have properties all over the state of California. Um, on the map that we have up there, you can see a little bit about our Bay Area housing portfolio, including the properties noted, which have EV charging installed. This includes some longstanding properties and some that are newer developments. We found Ecology Action to be a great partner to us in thinking about how do we incorporate EV charging both in new construction and on a rehab project. And it's something that we're looking to continue doing across our portfolio. And we can go to the next one. So this is one case study. This is a project in Watsonville, California, which for those who don't know is in the Pajaro Valley, a largely agricultural community. And this particular project was half farm worker housing, along with some permanently supportive housing for formerly homeless households, 53 units total. And on this one, we installed 12 chargers. And at the time, we were thinking about this, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later. As you know, why do it if we anticipate that the demand is going to be pretty low, which I think is still true across our portfolio. We are seeing increased demand, but by and large, most of our residents, even in places where we have installed EVs, chargers have not yet purchased an EV. But we're thinking about it in the context of future proofing. We try to do that a lot in what we build. These are really community assets that will be around decades in the future. And we do anticipate that even in the next few years, a lot of EVs are going to become dramatically more affordable. especially on leases. And so we think that our residents are going to start using them. And we know from some of what the research has shown and some of the partners who are on the screen that a big factor in whether low-income residents purchase an EV is whether they have charging available on site. So we think it's a really smart thing to do to set up these properties for success in the future. And we can go to the next one. So yeah, what does it look like going forward? I think we may not be installing EV charging as quickly and on every project like we have been over the last few years. We've benefited from a very generous funding environment, both at the state level and with the Inflation Reduction Act. And we've found that increasingly the landscape that we're seeing is less of a subsidy-rich landscape where EVs are an option and more of a mandate, in particular the new building codes in Sacramento, which require quite a lot of EVs. So it's something that while we might not from the very outset plan on having a set number of EVs on a particular property, we definitely want our projects to still be EV ready. So whether that's making sure that the transformer is big enough, knowing where the conduit is going to wire, we think that's a good idea to make sure that if a project, say, has a surplus or is able to find a funding source down the road, we're able to easily add EVs. We also are thinking about what can we do to reduce resident costs. I'm sure it won't be a surprise to the people on this in this webinar, but our low income residents are dealing with some of the highest electricity prices in the continental U.S. And as a mission-driven affordable housing provider, we certainly don't want to be adding burden onto those residents. And so we're looking at how do we make sure that we're allowing residents to charge at the most favorable rate possible. If it's something that we don't think about, some of our residents will end up charging at rates that are not to get way too in the weeds, but close to 50 cents per kilowatt hour once you tack on the surcharge from the level 2 charging provider to recoup the costs on top of PG&E's base rate. It can end up being really expensive. Fortunately, there is a way around that. There is a special rate specifically for commercial EV charging. It's called the BEV rate within PG&E's territory. Up until very recently, it required a separate meter. And so that was one lesson learned from the Watsonville project, where we did not meter separately for EVs. It's something that we're looking at doing on future projects because that's one way to ensure that you can get the residents on the BEV rate. So, for example, the project in Richmond, which had 9 chargers, even though it was pretty expensive to submeter for EEVs because it was 3 sites, so 3 separate submeters, we thought it was a worthwhile investment to ensure that residents would benefit from the lower rates. So we're hoping that in the future, it looks like PG&E is rolling out a program where submetering specifically may not be required, which is great from reducing an upfront cost of the install. But I think we need to be thinking about it from the perspective of the resident. How do we, as the affordable housing provider, make it as cost effective as possible? So we're offering this person a real alternative to their gas powered vehicle. And I think I'll leave it there and hand it over to Elaine.
Hi, I'm Elaine Palacios, a project developer on behalf of Mercy Housing. Mercy Housing is a nationwide affordable housing developer headquartered in Denver, Colorado. I am part of the California team based in San Francisco. And Mercy in general is very interested in developing sustainable and healthy communities nationwide in EVs as they become more affordable. And we're seeing a shift of EV usage within our residents and our staff. We've been implementing this as a standard now throughout our properties, especially in California. And Mercy's main objective or reason for investing in EVs is just equity on our sites. It removes a major barrier to our residents who would have to go elsewhere to charge their vehicles. So just having that within our properties has become quite crucial. Also, just the sustainability benefits. Transportation is a major emission source. So just having EV charging support on site leads to decarbonization, other local air quality improvements and such, and also helps Mercy's general climate goals as an organization that we're trying to achieve. And also just readiness, as Max mentioned, just being ready, EV ready is also becoming a big item on our docket with our affordable projects. So it also aligns with local government's requirements and building and such. So we're just trying to be at the forefront as much as possible. And as a result of that, Mercy nationwide has now developed this guidebook for all developments throughout our nation that is assessing properties in terms of what their need is now and the future, making sure that we're selecting properties to implement the best way possible, choosing the right vendors and partners. So we have partnered with Peninsula Clean Energy as well as Ecology Action, and that has led to even a bigger uptake of us implementing these. And also we're standardizing operation maintenance because after development's off the site, we leave it to them to handle. So yeah, we're creating a standard-wide system, which is very exciting. And as of today, we have about 210 EV chargers throughout our portfolio of 10 properties in California. So we are definitely pushing quite aggressively on this front. Next slide. So one of the most recent projects that we've completed is Minifil Junction down in Redwood City, California, in the North Fair Oaks community. So this is 179 units dispersed throughout 2 buildings. So at the beginning of this project, we had planned to install about 40 EV chargers and then up to 76 to be EV ready. But as we were progressing through construction and along with our partnership with Ecology Action and Peninsula Clean Energy, we realized that why not just do it now? The reboot was good, and we were able to figure out the economics of it all. That we, upon completion of our construction 2 weeks ago, we fully installed 76 outlets. Of those, 16 are level 2 chargers, and we have gone above and beyond the code requirements for San Mateo County. So overall, it's been very successful. Additionally, we are working with Orange Charger. So there's a direct interaction between the end user and the provider. So it helps lessen the load on our site staff, which was one of the key things that we were looking for, to have that general buy-in from our management group. Next slide. So overall, we are expanding our EVs throughout our whole California portfolio. Right now, we have about 20 properties in the queue of having EV implemented, and as well as we have a lot of already occupied sites. On the screen, you can see in Santa Cruz, we have Near Lagoon already an occupied site, but we are implementing these as quick as we can. And again, with our partnerships with Peninsula Clean Energy and Ecology Action, we're making this actually happen. And before it was a maybe, now it's a for sure. So with the strong partnership, we're making it happen, and it's very exciting.
Thank you so much, Max and Elaine. We now have a few questions for both of you. So I'll toss it over to Max first. What challenges did you face with the EV charger installation process, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest ones going in were making sure that for a lot of our engineers were working on it. Maybe this was the first multifamily project that had EV charging, so making sure that in sizing the panels and the transformer that it could handle the EV charging, the proposed amount of stalls. Another one is just the timing. So if you're thinking about doing this, let's say, you're a project developer and you find out about a funding program, but you've already, gotten your building fully permitted and are midway, down the road. it's a little bit, tougher if you need to upsize certain equipment, especially if it's pre-ordered. In the case of transformers over the last few years, that's been such a long time lead time item that knowing really late in the game that you're going to add them can be a challenge. But I think in our case, we were lucky in that we the program that we've been working with Ecology Action on, we knew it was going to be available on future projects, at least until very recently. So we were able to plan ahead early on, and make sure that we were incorporated into the design. It was the multifamily housing small business EV charger program from PG&E that offered a lot of benefits to our projects. So I would say that those are the big ones. And then what we shared earlier about proactively thinking about it from the resident perspective. How do we make sure that we're doing everything we can to get them on the best rate? We learned from experience that if we don't think about that, they're just going to be on the standard rate, and it'll be really expensive to charge.
Thanks, Max. Same question to you, Elaine.
So Mercy has a strong organizational commitment to sustainability. So gaining buy-in wasn't our biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge was more of the coordination and determining what teams within Mercy would be implementing EVs. When EVs were starting to be implemented in the Mercy portfolio, it was mainly focused on already built projects. So just the implementation of that became very burdensome. So it shifted from asset management implementing to now development taking the lead on that. And since that's been happening, it just has lessened the hesitancy from other departments, including site staff, on implementing, because they were very concerned about that, as well as before it fell a lot onto site staff to manage the EV chargers in terms of billing and stuff and items like that. So now that we've shifted to direct to end user interaction, that's 100% eliminated the burden on site staff, which means that everybody's super keen on participating. So with now having that practical infrastructure already put in place, it's now become a given in our world to have these EVs. So we're pushing as much as we can. And they've, again, become such a critical part on our residents' lives. And so trying to maintain EVs on site for access has become crucial. So right now, like with our partnerships, it's become so critical that that our partnerships have made it so that there is no buy-in needed. Everybody's like, let's go for it. So with the reduced administrative and financial burdens and like guidance from Peninsula Clean Energy and Ecology Action, they're helping us throughout the whole process. That it's just become so effortless that it's a no-brainer now. So yeah.
Thanks, Elaine. We'll go on to our second question. And Max, you'll go first again. How does your organization delegate ongoing EV charging maintenance and operations?
Yeah, I think what Elaine says resonates a lot with Eden's practices on EVs. We certainly know how hard the property management jobs are for the folks who work on our sites every day, and we don't want to add an extra obligation for them. We found that having a single vendor can be helpful. We've been using EverCharge, and residents can make an account and then not have to have property management as the go-between. So I think there are some advantages to that. I did mention earlier that they do tack on an extra 9 cents. The property could pay that for that, but at that point, the property would be carrying the cost, and we don't want to have EV charging be something that adds to the annual maintenance cost. We want to offer it as amenity and not as something that makes it harder to run affordable housing. So one consideration we've made in the future is, okay, if we're trying to find something that'll be as cost competitive, if we're shopping around trying to find different software providers, we have to weigh, like, is the cost savings worth having several different vendors across the portfolio? Or are there enough advantages for our sustainability team? And hey, we're having this problem with this kind of software. I think it's a lot easier to get an attention from a big company if you have 20 projects with them rather than a few projects with one vendor, another with another. So I think having a single software provider for the EV charging has some advantages, and we just have to weigh that against, you know, always trying to find the very lowest price.
Elaine, over to you.
Thanks. So as I mentioned before, Mercy, we have a guidebook that we've established, and it's a working document that we've been working on throughout the years, and that's how we have organizationally organized ourselves to be able to coordinate maintenance and operations. So it is a very detailed guidebook that essentially sets it up for development, and then there's a soft handoff to our maintenance and operational team that's led to the easy process. And like Max mentioned about vendors, Mercy has made the decision to partner with Orange, and now Orange is becoming the main vendor for our chargers throughout our portfolio, which has led to a higher investment on their part and a commitment from their part onto these properties. So they assist us on everything. They assist site staff. They assist asset management on pricing and stuff like that. And they walk through us on everything. And yeah, just the volume of EV chargers that we have now with Orange, just they're invested now, as well as Clean Energy and Ecology Action. We're all really invested now that now with this guidebook, it's becoming an easier process, and maintenance and operations is starting to become less burdensome and more smooth.
All right, and our final question, Max, we'll start with you once again. What considerations led you to choose level 1 or level 2 charging?
Yeah, for us, it really came back to the future proofing objective. Um, since we were, it depends on the size of the project, but I mean, it would be maybe 20% at most of the spaces would have would have an EV charger, usually quite a bit less than that. We also tried to stay under the limit of that would trigger ADA changes, because that would mean a reduced parking count. And oftentimes we were thinking about this after we had already been entitled, and the last thing you want to do as a developer is go back to the city and say we're actually going to have less parking than we promised you. Parking is a hot topic, of course. And so that led us to think about how do we use the limited number of EV spaces we have as efficiently as possible. And so I can't remember, EV2 or level 2 was the fire hose, right? So giving residents that faster option made a lot of sense, even though right now, even at properties like the Watsonville one we mentioned, where not we only have I think 2 households that are using that are using it. Eventually, it'll be more than 2, and maybe get up to the point that all 12 chargers are being used, and then some. And in that case, we would shift to a shared space model versus a designated space model. And in that kind of scenario, we would want to have a level 2 charger, because if you can only be there for a certain amount of time, we need to be able to have those faster charging speeds enabled. So for us, it's been level 2 chargers for all of our installs.
Elaine, over to you.
So at the beginning of our EV journey, we were focused a lot on the level 1s just because it was a lower cost to get into the EV implementation. But the majority of our properties now have a housing and a commercial component. So now we've geared it towards level 1s are more of the residential portion, and more of the more common space or shared space parkings, we are focusing those to be level 2s. So right now, the Middleful Junction project that I mentioned before, we have a combination of level ones and twos, and we have some level twos within the residential portion, just because right now we're in the early phase of adoption of EVs within our residents. But we did want to have those that do have EV chargers already to have access to level twos and have kind of a rotating system and a community-based organization almost of them shuffling their cars. So right now we are slowly shifting into more level twos, but they are quite expensive. They're more expensive than level ones. So we're now hitting a healthier balance. So at Middleful Junction, we're not parked one to one. So it's 179 units, 156 parking stalls. And of those 156, we have 76 chargers. And of those, 16 are level twos that are focused on the commercial side and a bit of the residential. So we're trying to uptick the level twos because we do understand that the demand is starting to grow and we're already seeing that. So yeah, we're just evolving as the residents are evolving their needs. So yeah.
Dennis, I'll hand it back to you for our key takeaways, and then we'll open it up to Q&A.
Thanks, Rachel. That was a great discussion. Thanks, Max and Elaine. A lot of really good points that you each brought up, and it's just always great to hear about your experiences and how you're thinking about EV charging at existing projects and down the line. But yeah, I'll close this out with a few takeaways before we open it up for questions. And the first takeaway is that access to charging at home it's really a key driver of adoption of electric vehicles. The convenience and the savings from on-site charging allows residents to consider an EV purchase. I hear a lot from residents that not only will a installation allow them to think about purchasing an EV, but they're just excited and feel pride that their property has these EV chargers and is looking ahead and thinking about how they can serve residents and tenants down the line. Second, help is available. You don't have to figure it out on your own. Technical assistance programs can answer your questions about EV charging at your property and help you understand how it might make sense. And generous financial incentives like those from Peninsula Clean Energy and other local agencies can really help to make an installation work within existing budgets. Just dropping my cat off my desk. Finally, any property can benefit from installing EV chargers. These installations can really be customized to on-site conditions, and as Max and Elaine alluded to, they come with a bit of flexibility if you plan it correctly, so that you can set it up for current conditions, but down the line adjust to serve commercial property or commercial drivers, or expand from assigned charging to shared charging in some cases. So those assigned and shared charging configurations and the different charging types that we talked about, they can make an installation possible at a property that you might have ruled out. And just to summarize, as EV adoption increases in the Bay Area, on-site EV charging at multifamily and especially affordable housing properties can help future-proof your property, can serve current and prospective tenants, and possibly develop additional revenue streams for you as a property operator.
Thanks, Dennis. We welcome humans, cats, dogs, everyone on the webinar. I'm going to open it up for questions, but before I do that, if you are interested in PCE's EV Ready program, I encourage you to get out your phone and scan the QR code that will lead you to a page to learn more and get in contact with the team. Our first question, I believe, is it is increasingly becoming understood that the full value cycle of EVs is with solar and storage, which also happens to be a disaster preparedness model. Other than perhaps the cost of storage, how is this concept gaining traction for multifamily developments? Who wants to take that one on?
I can I can take a swing at that one. So Charles, fully on board with solar charging EVs. We got solar panels just at my house last year, and I am very diligent trying to make sure the EV is only plugged in at least in the summer when we've got the sun shining, so we can make it as cost effective as possible. On the multifamily side, I'm curious what Elaine has to say here. Some of the solar installers we've talked to have not been super bullish yet uh, on storage for multifamily. What we've heard is that the tech is a lot farther along for single family or smaller scale multifamily like duplexes or fourplexes. But I imagine there are probably some multifamily developers that are doing it. It does in the long run. My understanding is that storage is supposed to come down in price considerably. And logically, it does make all the sense in the world, not just for us in having batteries to help with EV charging, but a lot of developers, I imagine Mercy too, are looking at all electric as a standard going forward, which for us will mean central hot water heating, major energy load. So that there's a lot of advantages in having solar and storage to help offset that. Because if you think about when are people using a lot of hot water, well, it's the shower you're taking in the morning and at night. And in California, under the new net energy metering rules, if the sun isn't shining, we're not really able to offset that. So in the long run, yes, there's a lot of advantages to having batteries just for the hot water component. But Elaine, what do you think?
Um, so the cost of storage hasn't been prohibited in our mind. It's where to put them has been actually our biggest challenge. Our sites, especially within San Francisco, are quite tight sites. So just finding a space for the batteries has become burdensome, and where we lead to not doing it anymore. So we just have just the panels going directly in. Yeah, and especially with the rehabs, there was one rehab that I was working in Marin County in Fairfax, and it was during 2020's wildfires as well. So we were trying to make sure that we had emergency generators or something of that sort. And yeah, it's just having, you need so many batteries to be able to carry the load to keep the building operational during a disaster that we've been looking at alternates on how best to accommodate that. We haven't been able to find the perfect recipe for that quite yet. And again, with the pricing of the batteries themselves, it's just not easy right now. Right now, just implementing EVs has become our big thing right now. And I think our next phase would be batteries and how best to have these becoming integral structures into our buildings and new construction.
Dylan, who I did not introduce, he works on our EV charging team at Ecology Action. I see your hand raised if you want to add anything.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, just been a fly on the wall here. I'm a program manager for the EV Ready program. But yeah, I think, the long-term goal for EV charging and having EVs in general on site is to have, some bidirectionality. So that's actually something that's been a part of our programs for the past few years as a requirement for all the chargers we install to be ISO 15118 compliant, which essentially means that they're ready to be bidirectional. So once the manufacturers catch up and the regulation catches up, eventually the EVs will be able to act as a store of energy and resilience for the apartments themselves. So just wanted to note that that's more of like a medium to long term vision, but it is, something that is being taken into account when we're installing chargers on site.
Thanks for that additional information, Dylan. I'm going to move us on to our second question. It says, how can EV charging installations be made more accessible for disabled and neurodiverse low-income residents in co-op housing and low-income housing? We'll give our panelists a moment to think.
I could chime in a little bit on
Yeah, thanks, Ellen.
accessibility. Just generally, we do think about this as part of site design. assuming that the person that needs this accessibility or accommodations is a driver, right? I picture my own grandmother. She's 5'0", and she does drive a Nissan Leaf. She's mobility challenged. So we do think about things like, where the chargers are located in proximity to the building. Are we putting some in ADA spaces if that's part of the project? And also things like where the chargers are physically located. So, for example, you don't want to put a charger like too high up on a wall where it's out of reach. We have standards for how high off the ground a charger should be, expectations for how long the cable should be, could be another one. And if the cable needs some sort of cable management or way to hang it up and get it back out of the way, those are things we might consider that can be a part of that accessibility question. Yeah, maybe I've given someone some more time to think if any of our other panelists want to chime in there.
That's really helpful, Melanie. Thank you for giving me more time to think. Um, I think where we place the chargers can make a difference. I think in general, it's nice to have them closer to the building rather than be farther away in the parking lot, so that if someone is disabled, they have that option. I think Ecology Action has also been great about the onboarding process too, and uh, resident engagement and education. So one, that they know that how the chargers work, how to use them, how the billing works, so that it's a little bit less daunting and something that residents can easily incorporate as part of their everyday life on the property, just like any other amenity, whether it's a package room or a playground or a play field or anything else.
And at Mercy, so when we started EVs, we had a lot of the level ones, and a lot of these level ones were in the ground outlets essentially. And we did notice that there was an accessibility challenge to them all. So since then, we've been shifting to pedestal versions. So instead of having outlets on the ground now, we have them on pedestals, so they're more accessible. In addition, now that we're partnered with Orange, Orange now is able to come to community meetings and such to have informational meetings with the residents in case they have questions themselves with the usage of their systems. And again, zooming back out to just the design of our sites, we're just trying to make sure that all the EV chargers, both level ones and twos, are dispersed as well as we can throughout the site. So they're not focused in one region of the site, they're found throughout the site. So to ensure that any bodily able person can access these. And in addition, also Orange's, they train our site staff. They have these training sessions, and when we have site turnover, we have these training sessions again to ensure that we always have the latest and greatest information. And if we don't know, we know where to direct them to.
Elaine, I believe you mentioned Orange is also available in a multilingual function, yes?
Yes, yes. So specifically in Middlefield Junction, it's about 90% Spanish speaking homes. So yeah, they have multilingual access and trainings.
We have two hands up. Melanie, I'll hand over to you first.
Yeah, I just also thought of something too while we're talking about this. And I think Elaine was getting onto this with having an app available in Spanish. I think how you activate the charging session itself can be an accessibility question. So yeah, most of these chargers are going to use an app, but that also, I will mention, not every charger only functions with an app. Some chargers also have credit card readers. Some chargers also have RFID cards that they can make available. So that could be a consideration, like especially say it's a senior housing facility, and maybe you're thinking not everybody at this site is going to want to download an app. That could be another question that you ask of your EV service provider, and something that we could also help make recommendations. Maybe you really want a charger where an RFID card is a possibility as well. All right, I'll pass it back over to Dennis.
That's a great point, Melanie. And actually, the image on the slide is a perfect example of that, with I believe, an RFID reader. I think I agree with everything the panelists have brought up. I'll also look at it from the from the funding angle. So a lot of funding programs will have additional funding or maybe be particularly focused on affordable housing or low income communities. So as you're looking for support and for potential funding, keeping an eye out for those sort of, I know PCE has a little booster. Sorry, my cat's walking again. PCE has a extra funding for affordable housing. So being aware that the property status as a low income community or in a low income community or a disadvantaged community can uh, help with eligibility for certain programs, such as from California Energy Commission. So on top of all the design elements, I think it's something that as program implementers and as we give feedback to program designers, we're always trying to push for improving accessibility in terms of the communities that are served by these programs.
That was a great audience question. Thank you, Albert, for asking that. We do not have any other questions, but I'll give it a few more seconds. Again, we have the QR code on the screen to scan if you want to learn more about the EV Ready program. And yes, just a reminder, you will be receiving a recording of this webinar as well as contact information for the EV Ready team if you want to talk to us further. Thank you everyone for taking your lunch hour to learn more about EV charging at multifamily housing. And a special thank you to Elaine, Max, Dennis, Melanie, and Dylan for sharing their wealth of knowledge today. It was very much appreciated. And with that, I am going to end the webinar and wish you all a great rest of your day.